今日はもうとってもドキドキするお相手が、隣に座っていてくださいます。今ロンドンニューヨークを通じて最も期待されている、最も素晴らしい舞台を次から次へと生み出している演出家の一人であるショーン・マサイアスさん。今日は、映画「ベント」の監督としてインタビューをさせていただくことになりました。How do you do?
Hello.
We have something in common, many friends and Bent now. I've seen the 10th anniversary production at the NT, which you directed it. And how many years have passed since the 10th anniversary to the film version?
I did the production in 1989 as a benefit to raise money for Stonewall, which is a gay and lesbian lobbying group that was founded at that time in the United Kingdom. And then the production was invited to the Royal National Theatre in 1990. So now it's 7 years. I suppose we started putting the film together in, I think 94. Because we shot it in 96, so it was 2 years before, it was 94, yes. So now it's 7 years since it was on stage.
And of course you know the play and the author Martin Sherman long before the...
Yeah, I knew him, I first met him before the play was produced at the Royal Court, which was in 1979 with Ian McKellen. And then in 1980 it was done on Broadway with Richard Gere.
Yes.
So I first met Martin in 1978. I read the play before it was first produced, and I encouraged Ian McKellen to be in it.
Yes, I heard that. That's a very important thing, to encourage him to be in it.
Well, I suppose I don't know how it happened. It's just fate, I suppose. But the play's been in my life since I was just over 20 years old, so half my life.
Yes. Wow. And you directed the play, and now you directed the film. I don't think there is many difference, but there must be some difference. How did you feel about that?
Well, I think it's very technically, and the organization of it is very different.
Yes.
The essence and the spirit of it is the same, I think.
Yes.
And when I was first asked to do the film, I said I would only do the film if it could be at least as good as the play or better than the play. There was no point to make the film which was not as good as the play. And the play had a huge reputation internationally. The play had spoken to a lot of people around the world. At a very important time when it was first done, I think it spoke on behalf of gay politics in a way.
Yes.
Then, by the middle of the 80s, it spoke on behalf of tolerance for AIDS.
Yes.
Now, coming to do the play as a film in the middle of the 90s, I wanted it to be, in some ways, a more spiritual piece, and to speak about love, and to speak against oppression of any kind, anywhere, at any time. And I think for this reason, we've made the film in a slightly more abstract world, a less realistic world. I didn't want it to look absolutely like Berlin of the 30s in an historical sense, or absolutely like Dachau in an historical sense, because this would be a documentation of which there are many. Yes. And I wanted to do something that would be about history, but also be about contemporary time.
And like you said, the character of the play, or how people receive the play, have been changed in years.
Yeah.
And I was very much interested in that, your comment. Would you explain a little bit more in detail?
With the comment of the change of perception?
Yes.
Well, I think Martin couldn't have written this play, I believe, without two particular events or issues. One is the Stonewall riots in New York, which created for America and then subsequently for the world a gay liberation, a gay movement. And I think Martin, whether he was at Stonewall or not, he was living in New York at that time, and it obviously had a very direct impression upon him and upon his work as an artist. I think the other thing that his play owes something to is the work of Samuel Beckett. I think that Martin was experimenting with form, because in his play, the first scene is like, as I say, a boulevard comedy, a sort of Broadway show. And then it becomes more of an action piece, and then it changes and becomes a piece that's very abstract indeed.
Yes.
Similar to or after Waiting for Godot.
Oh, yes, yes.
You know, one play owes something to the other, as it were.
Yes. Second half is almost like an experimental theatre.
It really is. It's the men are there and they're moving rocks, and they exist, but at the same time it's far more abstract. Yes. In what world do they exist? Is it a dream world? Is it a real world? Yes. How come they're able to have these conversations with each other without the Nazis invading them? It's non-realistic in a way. Yes. This couldn't, we don't think, literally have happened in a prison camp. But what he's getting at is something more about the spirit of the people rather than the actual mentality. And it was that spiritual aspect that I think I wanted to emphasize now, later in the 90s. To see the play as a political play or a polemic play on behalf of gay rights, it seems to me to be dated. The play has gone beyond that. Yes. Not that gay rights aren't still hugely important, but gay rights don't, in a sense, need the play to speak directly for them. Indirectly, yes, but not directly. To see the play as requesting tolerance for AIDS, I think that society has gone beyond that. Not that AIDS doesn't beg to have tolerance still, of course it does. But I think that the play, at this moment in time, needs to speak to people about the need for love, and how we love one another, and how we care for one another at this moment in time in our society. And I think that encompasses our attitude towards AIDS, encompasses our attitude towards gay politics. But I think it goes beyond. I think it's a bigger ocean now of emotions and ideas. And that's what I'm trying to achieve in the film.
I felt that exactly. The set of the Berlin Club, which is owned by Greta, and also the set of the Dachau, seemed somehow similar. Yes. Huge, first empty, and in Greta's club happens many things at the same time, but in Dachau happens just one thing.
Yes. I mean, I think I was wanting to say that the society that created Greta's club, the society that created a new kind of liberalism or a decadence, if you like, was the same society that created oppression, that created the prison of war camps, that created the concentration camps. And a society is created, in a sense, by its people. Whatever the buildings are, it's the people that give a society its character and its spirit. And I wanted Greta's club to be almost a premonition of Dachau. There is a sense of this decaying building, of this rubble, of this decaying society. But the difference, as you say, is that Greta's club is full of action, activity, physicality, sexuality. And the camp is a much more inner world, a world of the psyche and the spirit, I think. And I think that comes directly from the play. This is not something that I've imposed upon it as a director. I think this is something I've drawn out of the play. And so when you say, we started the conversation, you said it's very similar in a way. I agree. I think that for me, doing the play and doing the film was very similar because I tried to draw from the essence. The difference is, I think, that I have changed from when I directed the play to when I directed the film because I'm older, so...
When I saw the production for the first time, 1980, first three scenes of the first act reminded me a lot about the gay life in late 70s in New York.
Right.
And it was somehow similar to the Berlin in 30s. But when I saw the film version of yours, I felt somewhere in German or England or somewhere.
Yes.
But now there should be a place like that.
Well, I think that's the biggest difference that I have made with the film from the play. I think that Martin wrote the play, the first scene of the play, he makes you think that you're in contemporary New York. Mm. It's written like a boulevard comedy.
Oh, yes.
And you just think you're in this contemporary play with these gay characters leading this sort of fag lifestyle, as it were. In the film, I think that the feeling I wanted to create was much more of a kind of a rave, a warehouse party, a party where lots of young people are going to, of both sexes, not just homosexual, but a sort of more bisexual ambiance, and an atmosphere of people taking drugs and having free sex. And I think this reflects a huge part of youth culture globally today. I mean, it's not only in the United Kingdom that we have these rave parties, they take place all over the world. And it's now well documented that a lot of young people are taking pleasure drugs instead of alcohol. So I wanted to just pick up an element of this kind of society, that it was against this society of rebellion and of youthfulness and of energy and of expression would come the Nazis and create a wall of oppression. I don't know. I think that Martin's curiosity as an artist is that he's come from a very American tradition of show business, gags, a kind of Neil Simon world, for want of a better term, but with aspirations to the great master Tennessee Williams. But at the same time, Martin's also in love with European theatre. Oh, yes. Particularly British theatre, but I think European theatre in general. And there's no doubt that physical theatre has influenced him. There is an element of, not quite mime, but there is a physical element in which the characters are almost animals, that it transcends just a man carrying a rock. Yes. The imagery becomes about something even more primal. And I think that's very interesting, and I think it's Martin's most brilliant work, because I think the metaphor of being in a camp has coincided with the emotions he was trying to write about sort of perfectly. That he picked a brilliant metaphor, not only about imprisonment, but he picked on Nazi oppression, and I think that this is his own personal themes and the historical themes come together very clearly in this piece.
Yes, and also I would like to ask you about the change of conception of the play since maybe late 80s, because almost half a century has passed since the World War II. Many people having started discussing about the war and toleration, and Spielberg made the Schindler's List, and there was Shore. And has it influenced the conception of the play as well?
Yes, very much. Of the film?
Yes.
Yes, very much, very much. Because well, for a start, if one was to approach the film naturalistically, we would be following to Schindler's List. So this is impossible, because Schindler's List has said it very eloquently in a naturalistic way. It's given us a movie about that period of time that has touched people very deeply in their hearts, and it's spoken to a huge universal audience. So there's no way that Bent can follow that. If I was to do it in a more documentary style, there is nothing I can do as an artist that can compete with the real images we have seen of World War II or of the camps. Those images are completely eloquent in their horror and their reality. There's nothing I can do to mimic that. It's futile. So therefore, I have to use my imagination and create a world that will somehow invoke the audience's imagination as to what it might have been like, or what it could be like now if this happens again. And in this sense, I aim to speak to both a brand new audience, an audience that hasn't examined this period of time, and to speak to the existing audience who has examined the Holocaust over and over, and to try and, in some sense, reinvent our attitudes toward it, not to reinvent the Holocaust, not to decry anything of the truth of the Holocaust, but to try and reinvent our attitudes to it, and to endlessly, I suppose, provoke us into thinking how we can protect ourselves against such oppression ever happening again. Because there is oppression on every level in society, even in free societies. I mean, there is an obvious oppression of gay people in the United Kingdom in that legislation is different for gays than it is for heterosexuals. We have an age of consent, which means that heterosexuals can sleep together at 16 years old. Homosexuals have to be 18 years old. We have different tax laws, inheritance tax laws. We have different laws for common law couples. If you're a heterosexual common law couple and your partner comes from another country, once you've been together for a certain amount of time, your partner can stay. Homosexual couples can't stay together. So there is discrimination that exists in our legislation, and also in other, we're not the only country. There are many other countries that have their own discriminatory laws. So the idea of oppression is amongst us, and I don't just mean amongst gay people, it's amongst everybody. And so I wanted to provoke people into thinking we must not become oppressed. We must fight oppression. It's an anti-oppression film.
Oh, yes, and it's a very strong film. And I only saw very few of your works as a play director, stage director, like Indiscretions and Bent. But when I saw your play, I felt very much like watching a film, because your visual imagination is very strong and very provocative. And also you search into the very depth of people's mind. That's very theatrical. And as a film director, you are trying to be provocative, not to be realistic. And it's very theatrical, I think.
Well, it's interesting because when my work in the theatre, a lot of people, well, they've made two comments consistently that have been unusual about my work. One is that it's very cinematic, and the other is that it's almost balletic. It's almost like choreographed, like the dance. And now that I've come to do a film, people have said my film is very theatrical. So my only response can be is that I consider myself to be an artist. Yes. I don't necessarily think of myself as a filmmaker. I don't necessarily think of myself as a theatre director. I'm also a writer. So it's very hard to finally say what I am, except to say that I'm an artist. And I think that I approached the film in the same way. Different technically, of course, because the setup is so different, but the same way emotionally as I would approach a play. And that is by trying to create a very strong visual landscape so that the audience goes into a particular world. I always try to use my own imagination to create a world that's not quite realistic, and then to work with the actors very, very psychologically. Because I think that finally, no matter how beautiful the settings are, how beautiful the lighting is, how beautiful the pictures are, how beautiful the movement is, finally what an audience responds to, I think both in theatre and cinema, are the performances. An audience will, not so much for an art house movie, but an audience for a big movie will buy a ticket because of the actor who's in it. An audience will come along to a play because they know the actor. It's the actors they really want to relate to. It's the emotional performances that guide them through the story. So unless I think that the director and the actors work together on a psychological and emotional level, I don't think that the experience is complete. You can be very stylized as well, you can be very physical as well, you can be very visual as well. But I think it has to have an emotional core and make psychological sense.
And the style you use for the movie or for the play is, I think it must be decided by the style of the book.
I think that everything really comes from the writing.
Yes.
And I think that the writer is the person who comes first. The writer is the truly creative artist. They have concocted this entire story from their own...
From nothing.
Well, whatever it is, from the emptiness, exactly. It's theirs, it belongs to them. Our job then is to interpret it. And I think the more imaginatively one interprets it, the more creative you can become. But at the same time, I don't think there's any point in trying to distort a story. I've never aimed on anything I've worked on to distort or to conceptualize. I've always tried to interpret through the writing, to take my lead from the writing.
Oh.
I work with the actors for in the theatre and on the film for 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks just on the writing, just trying to understand what the story is about, not on the actors' characters, just literally on the central story, so that as a group we form a common understanding of the piece of work itself, of the writing itself.
Oh, that's very important. Usually actors want to go right into the book and do something from...
They get frustrated because they do want to physically interpret, but I to compensate for that, I use a lot of exercises and I play a lot of games so that they physically can express themselves.
Yes.
So one session in the day will be spent just working on the text, and the other session will be spent doing physical work. So then they can express both sides of their nature. But in that period of time, we're beginning to find the play and find a way to work physically, so that when they stand up to interpret the play physically, they have a lot of equipment, a lot of foundations to work from. And we approach the film in the same way. I workshop with the actors for 4 weeks, and then did 2 more weeks rehearsal. So we had 6 weeks before the camera turned over.
That's very unusual for me, I think. I have just directed The Shadow Box.
Right.
The first time, and I rehearsed for 3 months.
Right.
And for the first 2 months, I never go into the book, just exercises and improvisations.
Right.
And actors asked me so many times, why don't we do the reading?
Yes.
But maybe once a week, I did the reading, go back to the book, and then go around the book.
And were you pleased with the result?
Yes. I go back to the book for the final 4 weeks, and they now understand what I wanted.
I think that the danger when you start just with the book and you start to physicalize the book is that you impose things on it. You project onto it something else. It may be right, it may be wonderful, but it may be wrong. Whereas the other way, if you take much longer and you let the book lead you, the chances are you won't you'll fall into less holes, you'll make less mistakes.
Oh, yes.
You'll allow the book to breathe in its own sense, in its own time.
Yes. You must be very busy now as a theatrical director. And do you also want to keep your work with films?
I would love to do both. Yeah, I would really like to pursue both. I'm doing another film next year. Yes, and I've been putting it together for a while. So it's such a different process. When you plan to do a theatre production, you can normally it happens more quickly, and you get involved in the casting, and that comes together, and you get into rehearsals. Whereas with a film, the planning period is so long. It's quite frustrating, and I'm learning that. And
Yes.
so I think ideally I would like to be able to do both things to
Is
balance.
it based upon a play or?
It is.
Oh, yes.
Based upon a play by Noah Coward.
Oh.
It's called Quadrille.
Yes.
Yes, and I have done the screenplay.
Oh, great.
So
You do the writing as well.
I'm doing the writing as well, yes.
So I'd love to go to London or New York to see your place, but I am so grateful to you because you're now doing your films. We can see it here.
Well, thank you. I would like to. Remember, it'd be nice to work in the theatre here as well.
Yes.
I want to make a piece of theatre that I can travel around the world.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Sometime I can work with you here
Yes.
for the play, theatrical production. That would be wonderful.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
久しぶりにマーティンと会えてとっても嬉しいんですけれども。Welcome to Japan.
Thank you,
Again.
Yoji. It's really
a long
wonderful to be here.
time.
It's been 10
Yes,
years.
10 years.
Yeah.
Last time you were here for the park production of Bent.
Yeah.
Yes. How Japan changed in 10 years.
Culturally, there seemed to be. I always loved Tokyo, but the first 2 times I was here, there seemed to be an enormous cultural gulf between
Yes.
East and West. And so it was almost like being on Mars. It just seemed so, so different. But this time, it feels, in a nice way, very comfortable.
Yes.
And the gulf doesn't seem as it was. And it doesn't mean that Western culture has taken over in any way, because that's bad. That would be really bad. But just that something between the two has both have influenced the other, and something has eased. And I've loved being here this time. I've had the most wonderful time, and I'm completely in love with Tokyo. I really am.
Great.
I think it's an amazing city.
Yeah, we didn't expect you to come in here this year, but this year.
Neither did I. It was a big surprise to me too. Yeah.
Yes, I think you had 2 apartments in New York and London
I did
for
it
some time.
I did it one time.
Yes.
Yeah. Now I only have London.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why did you move to London?
I just liked it. I felt more comfortable there. It's just
Yes.
there wasn't one great reason, one great overwhelming reason. It was just something I instinctively felt
Oh.
would be good for me, and it was. I can't imagine living in New York again on a permanent basis.
Oh, I see.
Love living in London. Yeah.
I can understand.
Yeah.
But how long did you have 2 apartments in 2 cities?
Oh, really not that long. Just a few years.
Few years.
Yeah. I thought I would be going back and forth when I first moved to London a
Yes,
lot,
I
but
thought so.
but actually after a few years I didn't.
Oh.
There was no need to have the apartment in New York. Yeah.
London is very comfortable for you.
Yeah, it's extremely comfortable. Yeah.
Not only because the theater in London is richer or more interesting to you, you have other reasons like a daily life level.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the theater is richer, certainly richer than the American theater. I just like the people. I like the way of life. I like London. It can have all the excitement of a really big city, but it also, if you want it to be,
Yes.
it can be like being away in the country for a
Yes,
weekend.
yes.
And I know very few cities that have that combination, and I can't think of any. I don't particularly think of any city in America, or hardly actually. I can't think of any city in Europe that has that same combination. It's very special.
Now I would like to ask you about how you wrote the scenario for Bent. It's, like you said, very different thing, the play text
Yeah.
and film scenario.
Yeah.
And you wrote the original play,
Yeah.
and I think you love it very much. And how did you become somehow objective to the original play? And
Well, Sean Mathias, the director, had a very good idea. He said, "Don't write a screenplay."
Oh.
He said, let's do it a different way. He said, "Don't write a screenplay yet." He said, I had written a screenplay, I have to say, 17 years earlier when there was, we thought we were going, when it was on Broadway, and we thought we were going to do a film then, and we didn't. So I had an old screenplay. And he said, let's have cast it, and before we begin shooting, have a workshop situation with the actors, with the cast. And what we did was every day we read the play.
Yes.
We read the text of the play and different scenes of the text of the play and discussed them. And then I took those scenes each time and crafted them into into the film. So I did do some work before we began this process. So I had a kind of a script for the first half. I had the old script of 17 years ago. I had the American text of the play and the British text of the play, which were a little bit different in language. And we went through all of these together. And then I took them, and at nighttime, I wrote it. And so I wrote the screenplay during this 3 weeks. And what it did was, what was brilliant about it was, it enabled me to be objective, because writing the play was, of course, extremely solitary. And so I was in my room writing. And when I wrote the original screenplay, it was solitary. I was in my room writing. And by having this communal experience during the day, I was just in an entirely different situation. And I could get rid of all the associations with those earlier times of writing it. I could be very free to deal with it in another way. So it was a brilliant solution. And I wrote the screenplay each night after we worked, and I wrote it in 3 weeks. And we were going to do it for 4 weeks, but I actually wrote it in 3 weeks. Yeah.
Martin, do you remember this book?
Oh, I do very well.
This is the first print of
the very first printing of Bent in Japanese, which you translated. Yes.
Now we are reprinting it.
Oh,
for
good.
the movie opening.
Great.
And I would like you to put your autograph for some of our lucky one, our viewers.
Oh, a lucky viewer.
Yes.
Oh, should I write for a lucky viewer?
Yeah, please.
Okay. For a lucky viewer. Is this interesting television, watching me write in a book?
I think so.
Oh, good. There.
Thank you very much.
I did it.
Yeah, I'm going to show it. This is it. I love Bent very much, and I would like to direct the play here. I didn't direct it any yet.
Yeah, I know you haven't, and you've always wanted to. Well, you think you
yes,
must. Oh, you should do it soon.
After Bent and Curtain Call, are you planning to more film works?
Well, I'd like to, but I don't know what. I'd like to. Curtain Call was my first original screenplay.
Yes.
Because I had done adaptations before.
Summer House.
Yeah, Summer House, and of course, obviously Bent. And one that hasn't been filmed yet, based on a novel called Sea Under Love. But Curtain Call is my first original, and so I have a particular feeling for that film, which I think is a rather extraordinary movie.
Yes. How long you
I say
and
so myself.
how long you and Sean Mathias has been friends?
From as long as I've lived in London, actually, before I actually lived there. 17 years.
17 years.
Yeah.
So you must have talked very much about Bent from the beginning. I've seen the revival at the
Yeah, Sean did it
Theatre,
at the
yes.
National, yeah.
That was very strong.
Very strong,
production,
yes, absolutely, yeah.
Very.
Yeah. Oh, obviously we've talked about it a lot through the years. And it was, Sean was the only person I wanted to direct it when the opportunity came up. In fact, I wasn't really interested in doing it unless Sean directed it.
Oh.
Yeah.
So you selected him as the director.
Yeah, in that sense, yes, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I mean, other directors have been proposed in the past as some really fine directors, but I just thought they had the wrong sensibility. It just wouldn't have been right, and I just thought Sean completely understood it, and also completely understood the problems, because it's very difficult to make it into a film. And he he understood the difficulties, and that was very important for me. Because other people sometimes I would mention the difficulties and they would get a bit glassy-eyed and they wouldn't know what I was talking about. And so, and he has a particular visual imagination that I knew would be wonderful. And also because he's from the theater, he absolutely knows how to direct actors, and it's essential in a piece like that. It's the same thing of Curtain Call with Nancy Meckler, who's a wonderful theater director, and completely knows how to direct actors. And it was essential for Curtain Call, and it was essential for Bent, you know.
Yes. You have great actors in your films always.
Yeah. No, I've been very fortunate, and in my plays. Yeah.
Yes, of course.
The cast of Bent is, I think, extraordinary. And in Curtain Call, I think there's this blazing new actor named Jason Fleming who just lights up the screen and is a bit of a sensation, I think. Yeah.
And I think Curtain Call is going to be the first opportunity for Japanese movie fans to realize how great Anthony is.
Yes, absolutely. Well, frankly, it's the first opportunity for movie fans in the West to see how great Anthony Sherman is on the screen, because he's probably the leading stage actor of his particular generation in England, but he's only made a few films, and they haven't been that special. So this is the first time that he's really made the same kind of impact on the screen that he makes on the stage.
Yes, I've seen Tochon Trilogy and Singer and Richard III.
Yeah.
He was breathtaking.
Yeah, he is. He's a breathtaking actor, yeah.
And also the very important actor for Bent, Mr. Sir Ian McKellen.
Absolutely, yes.
Is in the movie as well.
Yes, because Ian was the original leading role of Max at the Royal Court, and then 10 years later in the production that Sean directed at the National Theatre, he played the role twice, 10 years apart.
Yes.
And now he plays Uncle Freddie. He does a cameo.
Freddie, yes.
And he's wonderful, yeah.
But the scene, the park scene was very good. How did you like it?
Oh, I think it's extraordinarily good and very special.
Yes.
It's this wonderful seeing Ian and Clive Owen together and during that scene, yeah.
And also the special appearance by Mr. Mick Jagger.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
In drag. Yes, yeah. And I always thought of Greta when I wrote the play originally as being like Mick Jagger.
Oh.
And so it just seemed natural that the wonderful thing about a film is that you can ask anybody to be in a film. In a play you can't, because you can't ask anybody to play a tiny role or a small role. You can only ask somebody very famous to play a leading role. But in the film you can ask anyone, no matter how famous, to play a smaller role, and very often they'll be very happy to. So it just seemed natural to ask the image that was in my mind originally to actually do it. Yeah.
And his club was so huge in the movie.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It's amazing, and they have so many different performances all around the floor.
Yeah.
And that's great. That was great.
Yeah. And visually, it gives a unification to the film visually, so you can see, because there's something about the structure of the club that it's not unlike the walls of a concentration camp. It sort of leads right to the end of the film. I think visually, I think it's quite amazing.
So you're very satisfied with the film of Bent?
I'm in a very strange position for a writer of being extraordinarily satisfied with both the film of Bent and with Curtain Call. I'm absolutely delighted with both of them, and that's I think it's fairly unusual. But I couldn't be happier with I'm so proud of both of them, and I couldn't be happier about both of them. And writers in films seldom have the opportunity to say that.
Yeah.
And to be able to say that about two films, and two films coming out at the same time I think is pretty rare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
a
very
lot of
different.
playwrights think their plays have been ruined in the film.
They have to rewrite.
Absolutely, where they really don't like what's been done, and I'm deliriously happy with what's been done. I'm so proud of it. As I say, as I am with Curtain Call. So I have these two children, and I'm.
Do you also plan to write a new play?
I plan to. I don't know what it will be. It's so hard. It gets harder as you get older. Playwriting does not get easier.
Oh.
It really doesn't. I don't know why, but it doesn't. Well, I do know why, because you tend. I don't know if anybody has that much to say, and you tend to say a lot of it, and then you don't want to keep saying the same thing over and over and over again. So, it's hard.
But
yeah,
you look very different in each particular place.
Yeah, yeah. Because I don't want to write the same play.
No.
Yeah. If I did, I'd be prolific. There are some writers who do write very similar plays year after year, but I just can't do that. Never been able to do that. Yeah. I just get bored. It doesn't interest me. I can only get interested if something seems impossible, actually, which means, among other things, something I haven't done before. So, if it seems impossible, then I want to do it. Yeah.
Yes. You write plays once a 3 year or something like that.
Yeah, sometimes there can be huge gaps between them. Yeah. It's quite a long gap between Madhouse and Go and Some Sunny Day.
Oh,
I don't know how many years, but it was a long gap.
Long gap.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I think it's something that a writer has to do. I do think it's very different than being an actor or being a director. I think you can only really write well when you're ready.
Yes.
Because directors and actors recreate, so you can recreate all kinds of things and be very creative recreating. But you can recreate all kinds of plays, many kinds of plays. But it's all completely original with a writer. It comes for the very first time with a writer.
Yes.
And it's hard. You can't do it every day or every week or every year. It's very, very different. Yeah.
How long does it take for you to actually write a play?
What do you mean by write?
Well, you have to look for the material and you
Yeah.
have to think about and
Yeah.
research.
Yeah.
But actual writing,
Sitting down, act one, scene
Yeah.
one, a few weeks.
few weeks.
But the stuff that goes before, which is the most difficult part,
Yes.
that can be years. Some Sunny Day, it was 10 years until
10
I figured out
years.
how to write, until I figured out how to sit down and do act one, scene one. So that's really the hard part. Yeah, and that's what takes so long.
Yes.
Is that first stage.
Yes.
Yeah.
How long does that part take for when she danced?
Not nearly as long. Don't remember. Don't remember.
But especially for Bent, you had to read so many.
I did a lot of research. Yeah.
Research.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But also, it was about things I had been thinking of for years and years and years and years. And it's the same thing with Curtain Call. I had been thinking about. I've been trying to write something about AIDS for many, many years, and I couldn't. I couldn't find the form. At first, I was trying to do it in the theater, and I would think of something, and I realized the play had already been written like that, about a good one, so I couldn't do it. But the lots of ideas and impulses had formed, but I had no outlet for it whatsoever. And then someone came to me and said, "Would you like to write a film set against the background of AIDS?" And And that immediately set me off. And everything I wrote in Curtain Call has nothing to do with any of the ideas, specific ideas I had been thinking about before, but it's all based on the thinking and built on the thinking of all of those years before. And so I think that's very much the way things often happen.
It's very hard work.
Oh, yeah, it is. Everything is, though.
Everything is. I hope Japanese audience would enjoy the product after such a hard work and labor.
Well, thank you. I hope Japanese audiences will be able to see other plays of mine.
Oh, yes.
Very selfishly, because it'll be an excuse for me to come back to Japan, which
Oh,
I really want to do.
that's true,
I would love to spend some time here.
Yeah.
So if anybody
Please
has
come
any
back.
ideas of how to get me back here, please send them in.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gojo.
Thank you.
Great to see you.